did.
Hi, Brian.
Karen, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm so good. How are you?
I am excellent, completely oxygenated. A great run this morning, feeling awesome at the salon with my crazy dog, who I'm sure is going to start barking, giving you a heads up.
That's okay. He can be part of the conversation too. But listen, this is our last episode for season 2.
I know, it's kind of sad, bittersweet.
I know. So guess where I am?
I have no idea. Where are you?
I'm back in Iceland. You can't tell, but I'm in quarantine in Iceland. And I was just thinking about this, that the last time for season 1, when we did our season finale, I was in Iceland then too.
I know. It's kind of interesting.
And maybe it's maybe it's going to be our thing, right? Like I keep coming back to Toronto for when we do the next season, and then we, I'll fly back here. So that'll be our shtick.
Yeah. Easy to do. It's only, 5 hours away?
No, 4. 5 in the winter, 4 in the summer.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for the start of season 2, I actually was in the salon. Yeah. So our first episode with Chris McDread was right here. That was really fun. And we did a tour and showed him stuff. Yeah. So full circle.
Can you show the shoes and talk about the shoes real quick before our guest comes on?
Sure. So we have these amazing shoes as part of World Market. So World Salon has segued, and now we have a little pop-up shop, and we're selling all kinds of cool things, plants, streetwear from some independent designers. Ivan Chung, amazing friend and very talented designer. And we've got some cool kicks by Shay. And you can't see the wash there, but oh well.
So guess who's ready to say hello? We have our guest waiting for us. Do you want to do a quick intro and I will let him into the room?
Definitely. So we are so fortunate to have with us today for the season finale of Loc Talk Season 2, Michael Williams, formerly of Much Music and amazing dread master, very talented speaker, motivational speaker, coach. We're going to hear all about it. So welcome, Michael.
Hello. Can you hear me over there?
Yes.
Hey, Michael.
Oh, okay. How you doing?
We're great. We're great. How are you?
I'm okay. I think, wait a second. I'm going to go out to the backyard here just to see if I can do this from outside.
Thank you so much for joining us, Michael.
No problem, man. No problem at all. Glad to be anywhere at this point in time.
Virtually or not, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all sort of live virtually to a certain extent now, and the dog came out, man, and living is good. And now that we can actually communicate and congregate with a few more people other than your immediate family and your pets, I think that the emotional and mental health of people will be able to, we'll help each other just to bring it back up again to a reasonable point. And hopefully that emphasis on mental and emotional health will stay with us now, because now we know how important it is. Before we were just going, whatever. And between situations with the police and then the pandemic and actually seeing people snap every day, hopefully it'll make us more compassionate, not only for ourselves, but for our neighbors, friends, and family.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the back end now. We're sort of with the vaccine rolling out. I think people have hope again, and I think that's going to make a big difference. In Canada, the rollout hasn't been as successful, I don't think, and especially in Ontario. But there is that sense of hope that it's possible.
It's getting there. We're getting there to like you say, a point of hope and promise, and We can look at the future. A lot of people, you know, it's very hard when you're having family problems and all that to look at the future. We've all been through it. I've been through it, and it's very hard not to just be there in the moment. Oh, hang on. No, the door is open. You can get in and out. Of course, it's his home now, right? I just live here at his behest.
I have my pup here too.
What kind of dog you got?
He's a Mastiff Shepherd.
Oh, wow.
And he's just meeting a new friend, Sherlock. Door. Oh. Sorry, a little bit of candid action there. And I'm at the salon, my business. We're at Jarvis and Adelaide in Toronto.
Okay.
And so we just popped down from work to do the taping here because my house, they're doing road work, and the bulldozers arrived this morning, and it was just not going to happen.
I completely understand.
Yeah. So, Michael.
Yeah.
A little bit of background. Karen's in Iceland.
I've always wanted to go.
Well, let me show you my view. You're talking about, you know, you went out to your backyard. I'm going to take you to our space. Let's see if I can get us out here.
I hear you can take the longest showers in the world there.
We can, as a matter of fact. Unlimited hot water. It's fabulous. So there's the ocean.
Oh,
wow.
Amazing.
So are you living in Iceland permanently?
My husband is Icelandic, and he lives here, and I travel back and forth from Iceland to Canada.
Wow, my son spent a bunch of time in Reykjavik. He's friends with Bjork, and he went there to spend New Year's Eve with her once.
Yeah,
and he raves about it. And I just want to go swimming around the what is that? The Continental Divide there and all of that.
Yes, you can actually step 1 foot in North America and 1 foot in Europe.
I love it. I love it. Come here. Okay, come. We've got a new member of the family, Junior, since June, and Junior is he's an adopted rescued Chiweenie. He sounds like a pit bull. He's really a Chiweenie, part Dachshund, part Chihuahua. And he's just great. He's a wonderful animal. And every day we learn something new about him. And now he's sort of more independent to where he will, you know, where you'll actually have to say to each other, where's Junior? And he's up sleeping in a bed or he's outside. Junior, come here, come here, come here. Here, I'll even show you. I think I can show you Junior here in a second. Junior, 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 say hi. Say, can you? Yeah.
Oh.
But enough of that. How can I help you guys today? What's up?
I want to talk about the beginnings.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, really, let's look at it. Let's look at. I've threatened to do this many a time, but I'll begin with you. I'm writing a book, which has turned into a trilogy. I look at life as breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then midnight snacks that you're not supposed to have. But I also looked at it at one point because I have hired more black hairdressers than anybody in this country. I've been part of their economic force for years, starting in Montreal, whereas I have a certain journey when it comes to hair. Now, I thought of doing a book that just was all of my pictures throughout life and the different hairstyles that I had or different haircuts that I had and what I was doing at that time and how that hair reflected that time possibly. I've never been one to follow fashion because I couldn't afford to. Even when I'm on television, to follow fashion is quite an expensive thing. And the most important part of fashion to me that I could follow and afford to do was my hair. I remember as a youngster going to a barber shop in the basement because in my neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio, there were the barber shops above ground and the barber shops below ground. The underground barber shops where your neighbor cut hair just as good as the guy around the corner, you know. So you didn't have to go spend $10. You could spend $2.50 over here. And there was a guy named Mac, and he was my first barber. And my dad took me to Mac because he was his barber. And Mac was an old-fashioned barber. He had the chair in cement in his basement. And the cool thing about Mac was that he was a Black member of the Playboy Club. And he had Playboy magazines all over his basement that I was allowed to look at as a youngster. And his walls, he did sort of a decoupage on his walls, and it was all his favorite shots from Playboy. Artistic shots, this, that, and the other, because you have to remember, Playboy had a long-standing relationship with artists and musicians and authors in the Black community. That's where we first discovered Alex Haley, was in the pages of Playboy. And also they had the clubs where they were the only club in the country that was hiring Black entertainers, comedians and musicians in their clubs. And as a matter of fact, they had to close their clubs down south because they didn't accept that. So my journey with hair began with Mac the Barber. And Mac the Barber really he was great for my dad. He was okay for me. I mean, he literally did the version of putting a bowl on your head and cutting around. Now, he knew how to cut my hair because he was a Black barber. But the highlight of Mac actually was part the Playboy magazines. The other highlight was really the fact that I got the same treatment as my dad. So I got the towel. Getting the towel was so special, man, because getting the towel, you saw people getting the towel in films, you know, and not Black people, but white people getting the towel at the bar. In It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, he's in the barber shop, he gets the towel. You know, so getting the towel was sort of a symbol of adulthood and manhood to a certain extent. So Mac was the first barber that I knew. Then there was another barber around the corner. We were living on Eddy Road. There was another barber like on 123rd Street or whatever that I would go to, that everybody went to. And, you know, you sit there, you'd wait. And like the Ice Cube, like in the Ice Cube film, the barbershop in the Black community, you have the church and you have the barbershop and you have the hair salon, right? Those three places are your confessionals. Yeah. That's where you go to talk about culture, about what's going on, about what's happening in the news and all of that. So the barbershop was a real meeting place for gossip. And also the barber shop was the place that a gentleman would come and say to you, what's your number for this week? They were number runners. The illegal lottery also hosted itself in the barber shop. So people would go and they'd say, I had a dream last night about 12975. Why 75? My mother's 75. And they would write the numbers out and they would put it in a bag. And on Friday or Saturday, if your number came up, you got all the money that was in the bag, okay? So that was another purpose of the barber shop. But getting your hair cut was very important. I mean, when I was young, there was like, there weren't fades and stuff like that. There was various versions of the afro when I was younger. And that was all fine and good, you know?
So anyway, that was the beginning of my history with hair and how it might be important in the future because it's that crowning top. I'm born in July. I'm a Leo, so it's a whole mane type lion thing, I guess, that I didn't know. And actually, like I say, I hired more when I came to Canada to go to university in 1973.
Five. I checked.
75. What's that?
I checked 75.
Well, actually, I came to university around 70. I believe it would have been December 74. If it was 75, then it would have been December 74 that I landed, and then drove to Ottawa. then started haircuts at home, you know, so I get my hair cut when I went home. I never got my hair cut in Canada in those early days, but I was in university. Who cared what I looked like or whatever? It wasn't like, you know, I had mountains and mountains of hair, but I think I always wanted mountains and mountains of hair, you know, because I grew up in the 60s. So you wanted to have long hair to a certain extent. And it was very limited back then what we were doing with our hair. We were braiding it. I got braids. My sister, you know, if you're growing up in a Black family in the 60s in America, and I think even still to today, your sisters and your mom are your default hairdressers. And there's nothing like having your sister stick her knee on your head while she's braiding it and pulling it really tight. Because at that point, whatever you've done wrong to her that week, she's going to get you, you know? And so that was sort of the beginning. When I came to Canada, I mean, I didn't really fuss about my hair till after university. Oh, there was one point where my mom and sister were using, they would use, you know, those archaic tools, a hot iron and all that kind of stuff. So they would straighten your hair sometime for special events with a hot iron. I'm sure I still have a burn or two in my head from that, because a hot iron is literally like a branding iron.
I got some burns too.
Now, when so that's, you know, that's sort of my beginning of the history of my hair story. I guess most of it happened in Canada. I remember the first time I went to go get a haircut in Canada. I was working and I needed a haircut for something, or wanted a haircut. And a friend of mine, a Black friend in Montreal, because I was in Montreal, said, go see such and such, and you go up so and around so and down there, and you'll find them in this building. I found the building. I went to the place. I went in. The guy probably, I was the only Black, and the guy had probably never really cut a black head in his life, but that wasn't going to stop him. That wasn't going to stop him from making that money. Oh yeah, no problem. Get out of the chair. And it was sort of the experience, the same experience that I had with Mac. I felt that he had just stuck a bowl on my head and went around, and that was it. And I'm not sure, I think I got the towel at that point. So I wasn't real happy. And then later on, I met Gene Mims, who became my hairdresser when I was doing, he just became my hairdresser. And this guy was just wild. He was friends with Diana Ross. And he was just a wonderful Black gay man who just taught me more about my hair than I probably ever wanted to know. And he took care of my hair for a number of years, even when I began at Much Music. And then when I came down to Toronto, eventually I met Billy Newton Davis. And again, I came down to Toronto and I wasn't real concerned about my hair. It was getting longer. I'd have to look and see what it looked like in some of the old photos. I'm sure it was just sort of a variation of some sort of bush or afro or something, you know, short all over, just looked like a helmet you could just probably lift off, helmet head. But when I met Billy Newton Davis, his roommate was Maxine Renes, who was a very famous Black hairdresser, very famous hairdresser.
Oh, yeah. I knew Maxine.
In Montreal, actually Los Angeles. And Maxine, I have a burn in the back of my head that I call Maxine. But I loved her to death. And she was a very, very good friend. And I was just completely broken up over her accident and her demise and stuff.
A few moments later.
Okay, I'm inside now. I've come inside. Anyway, so that was my Maxine story. You know, I miss her terribly, but she did some incredible things to my hair. And I had always wanted to get dreads, but I didn't know what the process was. It wasn't explained to me, so I started studying it and realized that you know, it was something that was African, and the warriors, Zulu, I would imagine, I believe, and that the warriors wore these were the warriors of the king. They distinguished themselves with their hairstyle, which was a form of braids and dreads. And of course, when Marcus Garvey said, "Look to the east," they did, and they saw these pictures of these proud Zulu. So anyway, that's kind of my. I mean, locks were something that I was always interested in, but no one really suggested it in a realistic way that could make it happen until I met this lady. And like I say, I sat down for 7 hours of pain, but she was just a great hairdresser and a great loctician, as they say on occasions. And she took me through it. And, I started out with the lock starter kit, and it just kind of grew. And now I'm just, what happened was my hair was black when I started, actually blue black when I started. And I have a young son of about 20 something now. So he would account for all of the gray. And the latter days of Much Music would account for all of the gray. Yes. I'm from Montreal. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I moved to Montreal and always drove through Toronto on my way to Cleveland to go home with my father and friends or whatever. And I'd stop over in Toronto, and it wasn't the party place. It wasn't a good time. And, being from Montreal, Toronto has always been second second on the party list, if not third, if not at all. You know what I mean? So, and being in Toronto working at Much Music was kind of interesting, difficult, but interesting. The work was great. There was not much life around the work, but there was, Maxine, my hairdresser, Jean, my hairdresser in Montreal. And then I had a really good friend, Miss Sherry Barton, who had a wonderful shop in Kelowna, and she would do my hair and stuff occasionally as well. She's an award-winning, wonderful, wonderful hairdresser and great person. So, when I look at my history of hair, I look through the people that have done it. In Montreal, once I was there, I needed to have my hair done. I had one person, I had 3 people on my head, one in the front, one on each side in the back and stuff. And that was great. And, it's my hair. So it's pretty important to me because as part of that whole presentation thing, I guess it became important when I went from radio to television, and people could see you, but I did a lot of stage work too. So it was pretty important then. As now, I still do a lot of stage work and hosting and things like that of television or what have you. So that's my little mini encapsulated version of how I got to having dreadlocks. And, I may not take care of them. Like I don't have the satin pillowcase yet or the silk pillowcase. It grows less on this side and more on this side because of that. People say, "Oh, just dye it black." And I'm going, you got to be able to grow old gracefully, So kind of like that. And I don't mind it really is me. I would have wanted to have these when I was at Much Music. Jean gave me extensions and Maxine gave me extensions. So I got to play with long hair, but it wasn't really mine. And as it got longer and longer, they do things to it and stuff like that. So now it's more under my control, I guess, than anybody else's. So I can do things with it. And I understand that if I go to the salt water and spend a lot of time in the salt water in the sun, I'll get, like yours, I'll get some bleach tips or whatever naturally. And now it's just a matter of keeping, because I haven't been to a hairdresser in a year and a half, I actually have a new one because I was looking for someone in Oakville that would do, that could do the locks. I could go to Hamilton, too far. I can go to Toronto, been there, too expensive. And my original hairdresser that did my locks just got in touch with me not long ago. She moved to Halifax. I think she may be back in Toronto. But in the interim, the last person I had is currently Lisa, who knows Karen. Because she was one of your students, and she's having a baby right now. Then I was out 2 years ago hosting CanaFest, which I do in Grand Forks every year. And girl comes up to me, and because we're like, she comes up to me, and I think, wait a minute. People in Grand Forks right now, and she comes up to me, and she's at this metal festival that I host and I love. And the people of Grand Forks are the biggest hearts and the most wonderful people. She comes up to me and she says, "Who does your hair?" And she passes me her card, and it's a Mod Lux card and another one of your students. And she says, "I'm in Toronto. I can do your hair anytime." And I said, "Well, Lisa's doing my hair." And she says, Lisa from Mod? Yeah. Oh, okay, good. As long as it's one of us.
Small world. Okay, Michael.
Go ahead.
Are you ready for this?
Ask me anything. Go ahead.
I'm from Montreal.
Okay.
I moved to Toronto in 1984.
Okay.
After graduating from Concordia University, the Loyola campus, communication studies.
You're kidding.
We must have been there at the same time. What a great to grow up in. And Cinema Sank. Do you remember Cinema Sank?
Please. Yeah. Midnight every Friday.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. Right. That was awesome. That's so crazy. We're kind of in the same vicinity, roughly around the same time.
Around the same. Well, 1984. You started in 84?
No, I graduated in 81.
Oh, in 81. Okay, yeah. So that's really around the same time. I would have graduated around that time. Yeah. I would have definitely, because I started around that time or a little bit before. Just I may have taken an extra year because I'm American, and I didn't have the CJEP.
Okay.
Most people get like a 3-year. I probably did a 4-year.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Because I didn't have that CJEP, that grade 13 extra credits. Mm-hmm. So I did a half year, and then, which was my electives, and then I did another half year. Yeah.
So what brought you to Canada in the first place? School, but
School.
Yeah. So, but then you decided to stay in Canada.
I had met some Canadians, and they had said, check this school out. And it turns out that Concordia Loyola was the very first communication department in the country, put together by Father Jack O'Brien, who passed away a few years ago. And Marshall McLuhan was asked to be the head of communication studies, and I believe he said yes, but then he passed. So that happened, and I got accepted by several different schools: University of Arizona, Kent State, which is a very well-known, very successful school, and Loyola. And I decided to go as far from home as I possibly could, I guess, but still in range, because Arizona would have been further, but at least Loyola, was 12-hour drive to Cleveland, Ohio. So sure, that was good.
And a lot less complicated to cross the border at that time.
No, hey, you crossed the border you could whistle Dixie, and get across the border. You showed, that was back in the days when you could show you didn't need you had a driver's license, you were okay. You didn't have a driver's license, where are you from? Okay, good, go. That. It was pretty cool. It was great.
Amazing. And so after I graduated, I worked at a restaurant. It was this really cool little place called Bojangles on Mackay.
I used to do all the music for Darwin's.
Oh, yeah.
And a whole bunch of bars, Le Privé, all of that kind of stuff downtown. And Bojangles, I think this guy owned he was an actor. He owned Bojangles, and then he had another place on Bishop. which is where Darwin's was.
Yeah.
Grumpy's. Yeah. So I did around that time. That's how I, supplemented my income, was that I did these large pancakes. They were like 12-inch reels, and which was like 3 hours, 6 hours if you did both sides. And I would do them for bars like Bojangles. I don't think I did Bojangles, but I definitely did Grumpy's, Darwin's, Le Privé, worked at 1234. I mean, so I did the bars, and then I did the nightclubs too.
Fantastic.
I worked in the nightclubs. Yeah.
Amazing. So I graduated, and then a friend of mine was Erica M's cousin in Montreal. So, and so Leslie actually got me a connection, and I got to meet Erica because I thought of becoming a VJ. And
this is after she was at Much Music.
Yeah, after she started. Not there that long. And so I actually had a couple of interviews. She facilitated me meeting a producer, Stuart something or other. And it didn't end up going anywhere, but I was like 2-3 interviews at Much Music for a job. So our little
took your job.
Well, hey, I mean, it was the way I heard about Much Music was the way I heard about Much Music, I was working at Shome FM. I was working at Shome, and I was also writing for a few magazines and papers like Music Express and a Montreal magazine and stuff like that. And, finding my way, I was already downtown. So that was half of the battle. But I had worked in radio since the age of I started a radio station at my high school. So really from about, my sister got a job at a radio station when I was like 9. So I had already done so much studying up to that point and listening actively and wondering about that as a job and a future and all of that, and was very involved. And like I say, I was 3 radio jobs when I was in high school. At high school, I ran the station. WCLV was a classical station. I worked there as an editor and a producer. And I also volunteered at the local rock and roll station, which was called WNCR, which was a statewide station. And so I had an idea that, media was my focus and was my interest. So I didn't fall into any of this stuff by mistake. It was pretty much so well designed. This is where I was going. And when I got to Montreal, I wanted to work in radio, and it was difficult, but Shome FM was a beautiful, wonderful station around the 80s and the 90s. Since then, it's gone to, it's done what most radio stations do, which make them listenable or non-listenable or successful or whatever. How many years can you play those same 120? I guess for a lot of them, so it seems. But I wanted to work there, and I was turned down a number of times. I worked at Radio Loyola during school to keep my chops up and stuff. But I ghost wrote for people there at Shome, and I really wanted to work at Shome or CJFM. CJFM was really interesting. The French stations, I thought C'est Quoi was very good. Secom F was great because they really had the pulse of the city. And Coco, Douglas Leopold was a very good friend.
Yeah. Yes.
And I miss him so very much. And so I was always around the radio, the media, blah, blah, blah. And 1234, I was working there. And I eventually, I was out on the road with the band, the Pointed Sticks, as their came back after I went out with Triumph on the road. I went out with Pointed Sticks. I was out with Sheriff. And when I came back from the Pointed Sticks tour, I came back to Montreal. And I went in to see Rob Braid at Shome FM, and I'm chatting with him. And he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, trying to eat on a regular basis 3 times a day. I kind of got used to that, you know, and looking for work." And he says, "Well, we could use somebody here overnight." And that was it. I came in that night to learn how to work the system. And, you know, that was it. I was at Shome until I left Shome to go do Much Music. And Shome was just my dream radio gig and my favorite radio gig. And it was quite interesting. I mean, people were, you know, this was, you know, they called it the Spirit of Montreal, l'Esprit de Montréal. And at that time, it was l'Esprit de Montréal. Because Montreal's only rock, and not even rock, it's rock. That already, rock, you know, because
Karen, this radio station, I'm telling you, it was so awesome. And that was when they would play a whole side of an album. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. First time I heard Bob Marley and the Wailers' Exodus, they played the whole, they just got the record in, they played the whole thing. Not that they were used to playing reggae on any kind of basis, but I mean, the songs I would hear there would be like G.T. Moore and the Electric Guitars, who were fucking great. But the first time I heard Shaka Khan, "I'm Every Woman," was on Shome FM. You know,
amazing.
And so Shome was really an interesting, great station. The rock and roll stations of my day, WNCR, WMMS, which is a legacy rock and roll station for like 50 to 40 years in the U.S. It was always voted the #1 rock and roll station in Rolling Stone magazine. That station was designed by a black man with a white guy, Billy Bath. And the staff was diverse, and the staff was always all of those things that we talk about and look for, diversity of this and that. We had it. We had it. It was called WNCR. It was called WMMS. MMS especially. You know, Kid Leo would get on Friday morning and say, "Man, Friday is Friday. The eagle flies. It's payday. And on Friday, man, when I go out the house, I got to hear music to do my steps." And he would play the Temptations, The Way You Do the Thing You Do, on a rock and roll station, not a rock station, because a rock station, you're locked into a mindset that is anti-music and anti-many things. But when you go to a rock and roll station, it's like, dude, let's go. And it was Let's Go at Shome. And it was a beautiful thing. And it was all in, all hands on deck at WMMS and WNCR. And Billy Bass, the guy who helped to design the station and programmed it and was on the air, my mentor. I met him a few times because my best friend, a fellow, my hero, a radio god by the name of Enos Lynn and Carolyn Thomas, 3 black folks working in rock and roll radio in Cleveland, Ohio, kicking ass, taking names. And there was, you know, racism wasn't even on the friggin' table. Nobody, we just didn't pay attention to that. And I still don't. But when you're working, and it was just a dynamic, high energy, life-changing, music-changing, monumental station. I mean, for 40 or 50 years to be voted the #1 rock and roll station by Rolling Stone magazine readers is a hell of a feat. And I never played myself short in those games. And when I came to Montreal, Shome felt the same way.
Yeah, for sure.
And which was the only reason why I wanted to work there. Plus, it combined music culture with French Canadian culture and French Canadian music and language. Beautiful thing, just a beautiful thing. And to eventually work there was of doing this job that I do, because I absolutely loved it, man. Loved it.
Shom, me is too. It's like in my soul, the rock and roll in my blood because of that. And my first concert ever was Led Zeppelin, 1975. And since then, that's always been one of my highlights, is going to see these incredible bands. And so, it all started with Shom for me.
Yeah. I mean, I would, before I leave the planet, I would like to own Shom and to change it back to what it used to be, because it was, back in the days when you would hear the clip from Duck You Sucker, that Shom, 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 you would hear that, and people, it was just, we were all like Pavlov's dog, we would hear that and we would like, I would go to the States and do work and do all that kind of stuff, or visit my family. And then driving back, I get to Toronto. I would stop in Toronto, have a bite to eat with my dad in China. We would drive straight to Montreal. But the moment I crossed Smith Falls, I could pick up Shom, and I would turn it on. It'd be like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would hear Oat Shows or Plume de la Tavesse or Boule Noire or Nanette Workman or Walter Rossi or Michel Pagliaro or Beau Dommage or Toubabou, or any of those things. When I would land in a plane, get off the plane in Montreal, when I would hear French, I would just, it was like Bruce Faber, it was like I would just calm down, because I loved it. And it just, I was always comfortable there. I was always very comfortable there, socially, culturally, and otherwise. It was just more, it seemed to be more accepting, but also French Canadians felt like Canada didn't accept them. So I was familiar with that feeling of disenfranchisement. So I would feel at home there,
Well, of course we have similar sort of experiences, because we were there around the same time. And I feel the same way. I felt different, but I felt supported and I felt encouraged, and I wasn't ever really feeling singled out, in Quebec.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being made fun of when I went to a record store. I can tell you the record store. It was a Rock on Stock, just above PM. There was PM Music around the corner, but there was Rock on Stock that was above another record store that I would go to, a dance music record store, and it was right there. These places were, was this on Stanley Street? Rock on Stock? No, but it was right around Stanley Mountain, that area. And I went into the store asking for Boule Noire, which translates literally to the Black Ball, which was the great George Thurston, one of the greatest singers and one of the greatest soul singers. And he was in French, so people don't know who the hell he was, but he was phenomenal. And I had just driven up to Montreal, and I went to the store the next day because I heard that in the car, and I had never heard it before, and I was just completely captivated. I had to have it. So I went to the store looking for it. Well, it had come out, and I'm not sure they didn't know what I think they didn't know what I was asking for, but they also thought it was an opportunity to make fun of this black guy asking for the Black Ball. Right. And I spoke enough French to know that they were making fun of me. And I went, oh, okay. And I promised myself, just like when I first came to Montreal, there were places I couldn't get into. The very first time I came to Montreal, the very first day I came to Montreal, there were probably about 4 or 5 nightclubs that I couldn't get into because I was black. And I promised myself at that time that would not define my life.
Yeah.
And that they someday would pay for me to be there and respect the fact that I was there. And I did that.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, Montreal, I go to Montreal now. I don't pay for a lot of things, but I go to Steer Burger and all the places that I worked, and I love it. And those people love me. And I really wish I owned Shome. That's one thing I'd like to do, because I think it's not the glory days of what it was, but I think it should be. I think it should have that same attitude, and there should be stations more like Shome used to be, because it was a cultural hub for the city.
Mm-hmm.
Shaky Al Band, Tuba, all those bands, all the French Canadian bands went through Shome. All the French Canadian rock bands and folk bands went through Shome. Harmonia went through Shome. Beau Dimanche went through Shome. Contract, I could just keep going. And so Montreal is was a very, very special place. And for a young man, you know, of 17, 18, 19, it's a very freeing place. And it was a wonderful re-entry into the world, because before that, I had already been to Spain, been to Belgium, toured the world with people and stuff like that. So I had seen parts of the world that should have been foreign to me. And I knew how to travel well and to I went to a bunch of films at school to learn about the October crisis, because I wanted to know what the latest conflict was on the ground where I was, what I may have to deal with, you know? And so that was really interesting. And Montreal, there's the west end of town where we went to school, mostly English. And so you have to leave that end and go downtown and go to the East End before you really find out what really is going on. And that was a wonderful discovery as well. And I'm always in touch with people back in Montreal. I occasionally do CBC in Montreal or Quebec City. They'll give me a call and ask me to do something, and I will. It got a lot of love, man. But I mean, a lot of love for this whole country, because my job was showing love to the whole country and being a musical instructor for 3 generations of Canadians. I take that very seriously, and I'm quite honored to be able to still continue to do that in way, shape, and form. And music is the actual meeting place, the actual meeting ground, I think, for all cultures. And so it's music, man. It's always been music, arts, literature, and the culture of all of those things combined, and sharing those, and also take those from young people as well, and assisting them to get there like I did.
Amazing. So Karen and I started this company called Noggin Oil. It's a hair product for dreads, sectioned hair, braids, extensions. And Loc Talk is actually a vehicle that we use to sort of help promote Noggin Oil. Have you heard of Noggin Oil?
I have your product. I'm definitely looking forward to using it. I figure that Lisa will show, now that I have the instruction of how to use it, you know, it's as simple as I thought it would be, but, you know, I'm a guy. Nothing's as simple as I thought.
I was just curious about, through this whole story of yours, you didn't really touch a lot about much music. And that was where I was introduced to you. And I was just curious, because you did make a point of saying that there was not difficult, but there was a challenge or something.
Yeah. I mean, much music was an interesting situation. But none of this happened by accident. It was all very intentional. This was my intent to do these things. So I was always preparing myself, even when I was a child, to do what I did. I was always, and I look at it, I come from a very traditional Black family, and education was the most important thing to uplift us in the 50s and 60s. Sports, I was very good at sports, but I was a jock to a certain extent, but I was a jock to a big extent. I was really good at football. I got really good at basketball, track and field, and I was a great swimmer, and I'm an archer. Plus, I'm an equestrian now, you know? So, and I find that when the era that I was coming up and being mostly Black and part Cherokee, and got white folks in the family too, but my grandmother is full-blooded Cherokee. And I noticed you tell people what you can do. And I try not to speak about things unless I can do them well. If I'm doing them just as a joke or something, I'm not going to come to you and I'm doing this and that. So I try and look for a level of excellence and professionalism, and I try and learn as much as I can. So education was the thing that happened in our home. And that's where it all stems from, everything that, from my mother and education. And I didn't want, I saw jocks got chewed out. The only jock that I had any respect for other than Muhammad Ali was Arthur Ashe, great tennis player, Muhammad Ali, but especially Jim Brown, because Jim Brown left before they could chew him up. Jim Brown left when he wanted. He didn't leave when he had to because he was broken down. He was poor. Jim Brown said, "I'm done. I've done it all. I broke every record. I'm done." And that's kind of like me. And when I left Much Music, it was kind of like a drop the mic moment, even though they didn't know it, and things like that. It was a great place to work for a number of years, but then you're pretty much so forced out of the nest, I think, at a certain point, because they always want that. It's sort of like Menudo. I don't know if you remember the band Menudo, but every few years has when Ricky Martin was in Menudo and his voice began to change, or he reached puberty. Oh, get him out of the band. We need more young kids. Come on. We got more young kids. Now that enables them to do two things. Ricky Martin's at the top of the pay scale. The new kids are at the bottom of the pay scale. So then it's a business decision too, as well as possibly an artistic decision. And so there's a lot to be said about Much Music. And I only recently realized again that people are kind of interested in that. It's come around again. Ed DeSock is trying to start a new Much Music, which is interesting because Ed DeSock wasn't there when they started. He wasn't there when they started the old Much Music. He came in after I left, sort of thing. I never had the privilege of working with Ed DeSock, but hey, man, go ahead, do your thing.
That's like when a sitcom's been on the air for maybe 5 or 6 seasons and they bring in the little kid. It's like, oh, we're going to try to spruce things up with a new character. Exactly.
Well, that's their Menudo moment, where they try and do those things. But it was interesting because most people, you're right. I mean, I go to Montreal and most people know me from Showm FM and the Sunday Express that I wrote for, the shows that I hosted or did, being a DJ. Also, I'm a licensed laserist. Okay. Yes, I was the first licensed laserist in Canada. I have a license by the Bureau of Radiological Health in the U.S. I was licensed. I can operate lasers or X-ray machines, and I did the most incredible laser shows. I lit up the Olympic Stadium and Velodrome with laser light. They turn off all the lights. I designed the show. Bang, 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 bang. I also did the world's largest disco in Buffalo. I did the Triumph tour with lasers. I did a tour with Sheriff with lasers, all kinds of stuff, So I fed my interest at every moment. So Much Music is probably the most visual, people are going to know you because I went from radio where I'd be standing in the bank talking to somebody on the phone, somebody in French would turn around and say, Tabernacle, the Post Cafe. Because I had a show called The Post Cafe that came on at like 5 to 6 in the morning, where I could play anything I wanted or anything they requested. And so I'm honored by all of that. I'm honored that I can go on stage in Montreal and people know who I am. I go to town and I don't have to pay for anything except for my steer burgers. And, my Delilah's burgers, I got that down pat. The first week I was on Showm FM on the midnight shift, midnight to 6, Mario Delilo, the nephew of the owners and founders of Delilo Burgers in Montreal, called me up and said, hey, man, play Thin Lizzy. They're like, sure, man. And come by and get a burger. He fed me that whole winter. That's how I survived. Because when you're part-time at a radio station, you get a check once a month. Right.
Great.
It was great. So it was everything. It's definitely not just Much Music. Much Music was a big part. And I was, they wanted me to do other things with it, or, you know, and then at a certain point you realize that the only way you can continue is to buy it or to own it, because that's the only way you're going to get the treatment or the respect that you're possibly due. And also you become a player, you know? And I think the thing that's been missing in Canadian culture is players of other of diversity.
So Michael, this has been a total treat. You are a Canadian treasure.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Maybe I'll be an American treasure too someday, but you know, I appreciate that. I really take it quite seriously that Canadians have listened to what I've said about music and a few other things for at least 3 generations, and that's a big deal. It's
something you should be proud of. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I also lecture and I teach whenever I can, and I go out and speak to folks and stuff like that, because we got a new generation to inspire, you know, and we still have an old generation to bring together, because the knuckleheads keep, you know, doing, you know, that doesn't do us any good, you know, to call someone names and all, you know, sit down at the table, have a meal, discuss it, talk it over, you know, because what's happening in the street is the voices of people that cannot be heard. Mm-hmm. They could be heard. They tried, but you weren't listening, you know? And so we have to make all voices heard, all voices welcome. I don't know a world where everyone is not inclusive. That has always been my world. So when I hear people going, oh, LGBTQ, this, that, one of my main mentors in my life, Albert Petrak, was gay as the day is long and the most incredible radio announcer. And he taught me so much as a friend. And I love him and I miss him to this day. I don't know a non-inclusive world, and that's just the way that we were raised. And so I wish more people did that. When I see all these different things, I'm going, yeah, what took you so long? I don't even get into the discussion because I don't need to be in the discussion. People need to figure it out themselves, you know? It's kind of like racism. I don't need to be in that discussion now. You know, I really don't need to be. It becomes my problem because someone makes it my problem. But to do something about it, don't expect me. I just have to live my life the way that I am. There are other people that have to do something big about it. And I wish they would hurry up because you're damn late.
So we're going to do a giveaway to our listeners.
Okay.
And so I have a question that I am going to pose. And if anyone has been listening earlier, they will know the answer and can pop it down in the comment section. Okay. So is the radio station that Michael Williams worked at in Montreal. Give us the 4 letters, and it's a radio station that he eventually one day will purchase and make it as glorious as it was back in the day in the 70s. And so what's that radio station? Pop it in the chat. And it has been absolutely amazing talking to you. Like, it's been such a joy, and I feel like it could keep going. We have to hang out. Like,
okay, so before we're almost over. I'm getting that feeling we're doing the wrap up. So what we'll do, because I talk way too much. If there's anything you guys wanted to ask me, rapid fire, and I'll give you quick, short answers. But anything that you need or want to know.
Okay, so the Locs. Mm-hmm. Your Locs, that Bob Marley film, the biopic on Bob Marley. What was it called? I just went blank on the name.
Which one?
It came out a few years ago, the most recent one.
The one done by his girlfriend, by Cindy Birdsong, who's living in Montreal. Yeah. What about it?
I just love that film so much. And I watched that film and I had a dream that I had dreads and my hair at the time was about that short.
Mm-hmm.
I had dreads and they were silver white, long silver white dreads. I had that dream and that's how I got locks, because at the salon here, the next week I came to work and I said to my staff, I had this crazy dream and I know I have short hair, but I think I want to have locks. And so I got extensions. I went from hair that long to hair down to here in hours. And then Karen and I met like about 8 months later because my initial set were synthetic dreads.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really like the synth. No. And so I started looking for who is the best person in Toronto to sort of work with human hair locks. And Karen popped up. And so I went to her and we became really good friends. Like after the second maintenance that I had from her, she was like, yes, this is a friend. And we've just been inseparable ever since. And we created this line together, and the noggin oil actually started for me because I was training for a marathon. I was doing the New York Marathon in 2015. And the training, the running, the sweat on the scalp, 5 times a week, it was driving me insane. So I came up with this concept of an express wash, so to speak, that you could just spray on the scalp and get the perspiration off, the sebum, the dirt pollution. And then at the same time, Karen was working on a product. She was solving her own problem at the same time. And Karen talked about the roller balls.
I want to ask Michael more questions.
Whatever. Yeah. Well, see, I have the roller balls and I find that really interesting because they remind me of small bottles of Band deodorant. Because that was the first time I saw a rollerball, but as a guy, I didn't use Band deodorant. So I never got to play with the rollerballs, but occasionally I would open it up and just run my hand. I'm going, what is this? Because I was a scientist, but I'm looking forward to using all of them because I figured I could wash my dreads and then I could use the product after, because sometimes there's still, my whole thing was the girl that I had started with, she says you rinse them until the water is clear.
Mm. That was shampoo in your hair. Yeah, you really need to make sure that the shampoo is really removed from the locks, because there can be buildup over time if it's not properly removed.
And then,
go ahead.
No, then I would boil rosemary. And I would make a big vat of rosemary water that would be my final rinse.
Nice.
So that's how I would always finish. So I would always have bits of rosemary in the shower, which doesn't really hold well if you're living with someone. What's that?
I'd rather prefer to find rosemary in my bathtub than like somebody's hair, right? And when you have locks, we don't shed, right?
Yeah.
We really don't lose hair in the same manner as when it's loose. So
yeah,
your locks that's, oh my gosh, my inspiration for why.
Well, I started to. It's funny, because I like it to be more. In the beginning, it's stiffer, right? Because the hair doesn't have that much give, and so I almost thought about cutting them back, just so I could have that stiffness, that short stiffness again, and then have it grow out again, because it grows out more of a box shape. And I really like the box, But then I discovered that if I just do the whirlybird thing and tie them up, I'll get the box, right? Without having to cut my hair. And I'm going, I didn't know, I'm a guy. I don't spend a lot of time on my hair. I do spend a lot of time on my hair, but I don't pay any attention to it. It's my hair. Somebody else who's really good does it, and I know how to do it, because normally, even with the extensions and stuff, come on, you just you know, and you do all, there's no combing, there's no brushing. It's just a matter thereof, you know? And then when I get into work mode, I may not, you know, like I got a call one day. I'm on the bicycle at like 7, 8 in the morning, and I'm coming back to the house and I get a call and it's CTV. And they said Gord Downey had just died. And I had my hair on the whirlybird thing, you know, and like a helicopter. And they said, we need you to do, I'll be home in 5 minutes. Get home, never changed my hair, just went on, bang, 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 because I had to do it then. Didn't care how it looked. I think it looked okay. The piece went viral, and important was the work that I was doing. So the great thing for me is that when I got locks, I think it was more reflective of who I am, who I was, who I will be, my artistic sort of side. I felt that it encompassed more of my spirit and my soul than anything else that had come before. All the hairdressers were great. They were all absolutely fantastic, and I am honored to have worked with each one of them, tried to make me look as best as possible. But now I just do this. And you know what I mean? Like Lisa comes back, we sit in my backyard. She does about 3 hours. She does my hair. And, you know, because I always have, as you can see, I got growth. Boy, have I got a 1.5 years of growth here. I tell you, I mean, you know, I could hire 2 of them, have 1 on each side, that sort of stuff. But I really do like having them. And it was funny because my nephew married a loctician. I'm going, you know, at the beginning, and so in the States, and she does all natural, no product, stuff like that. She should have this stuff. And she did my hair. I had to go home for a funeral, and she did it and just twisted it and stuff like that. Normally, my hair is done with crochet needles, right? They get in there and occasionally, just like my sister back in the day, you'll get, okay, I need to put my knee on your head. That's what it always feels like. But I really do enjoy having them. I think my son has played around with the idea of getting them. But I remember in Jamaica, the saying being, you know, because not all Rastafarians have locks, right? They say, you know, you have locks in your heart. You don't have to have them in your head. It's a state of mind, more or less. And in terms of, I've always been, in terms of thought and spirituality, I've always been rather open and pretty much, you know, the ways I'm quite familiar with Rastafari. And I sat with Burning Spear and, you know, people like that. And I worked with Jackie Matu, and I managed Jackie Matu the last year or so of his life. And I still do work with Willie Williams, his partner that wrote the song Armageddon Time that was recorded by The Clash. That was their very first hit single, and is one of the only foundation reggae songs that Bob Marley had nothing to do with. Mm-hmm. And it's a classic, and it's also sort of like the Funky Drummer and Sex Machine is to hip hop and being sampled. Armageddon Time is that way. So much that the Fugees have done it. Everybody's done Armageddon Time. So I've always had Rastafarians around me, and, you know, and we've always been able to listen and think and do things together. And that was always really, really wonderful, whether I was in Jamaica or anywhere. So I've been accepted by that culture and the artists and stuff. But I'm a player. I'm a musician as well. So, which a lot of people didn't know because I don't really put it out there. You know, you have to be in the place where I'm going to do it. And then I do it, and then I leave right away, so I don't have to discuss what I just did. You're going to catch me to talk about it. It's like jazz. It's different every time, and I don't really want to talk about it because I ain't bragging or nothing. You know, it's just a part of me and what we do. You know, it's just that old African thing. So, but I really do appreciate having them, and I thank you for the product, because I'm kind of looking forward to using it now, because it's great, because I always laugh about being a guy, but it has that guy. I mean, you know, what do? You spray it in, rub it out, you're cool to go. You know, it's a ready sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
No matter what you've been doing, you know, if you've been smoking, you've been doing it, just put this in your hair, smell better, look better.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can go to that board business meeting and not smell like dope.
Well, we're gonna sign off. So
all right, cool. If you want to do something again, just let Tracy know, or hit me up on the email or whatever. I'll send you my number, and like that. And I guess I'll see you if I ever get downtown again.
Number. So if you need any guidance with the noggin oil, just give me a buzz.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we come down to go to. We're going to be coming down soon. But we come down, get the pizzas thrown in the back of the car. We go to Pizza Libretto, get those 4 pizzas, bang, in the back of the car, get home quick. And oh man, it's like, you know,
Well, we should wrap up, because we can
do this all day, and I got to have breakfast here. It's like breakfast is turned into lunch. I have really enjoyed this, guys. Thank you.
Dinner time here.
And yeah, exactly. I'm going to go up and cook some lunch now and think about dinner and go for a walk. But I really appreciate it, and thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Good luck with the book.
Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful season 2 of Loc Talk. I couldn't be happier. This is Karen.
And Brian, and thank you to all our incredible guests this season. You are awesome, inspiring, hippies, hair nerds, all of you. We love you.
And tune in for next season, because we are going to do a season 3, right, Brian?
We're going to do a season 3, and it might even be the world tour.
Let's manifesting. Yes. So, still hit that subscribe button, because when we get back into this, you're going to be notified and you won't want to miss season 3. Until then, we love you all. Thank you so much. And see you next time.
See you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Loc Talk. This episode of Loc Talk was brought to you by
Noggin Oil, Mod Locks, World Hair and Skin.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time.